On this channel, we've done our fair share of list videos, and one of our more popular series has gotta be our 8 great RPGs with deep and mature stories. Considering the vast majority of our audience seems to be between the ages of 25 and 44, this checks out. Well, you know what that calls for. Time for part 3. We actually got a bonus game this time to make it 9, but more on that shortly.
Throw me a frickin' bonus here!
The only criteria for this list is it either has to cover some heavier themes, have older characters, or have a deep enough story that simply makes you think. Keep in mind, some of the more popular examples we already covered in part 1 and part 2, so if one of your favorites isn't included here, that might be why. Alright, with all that said, let's just get into it. Here's an unranked list of 8 more great RPGs with deep and mature stories. Part 3.
The light is your guide.
The dream is what keeps you going.
Now is the time to shape your story. Your fate is in your hands.
Alright, to start off this list, we have Wandering Sword. Full disclosure, we are being paid to include this game, however, we chose this topic specifically because we honestly think it very well fits here, both in terms of its relevancy to the topic and its overall quality. With that said, we are including this as a bonus 9th game, so there will still be 8 more after this. Wandering Sword has you playing as a young swordsman as he narrowly escapes his death and then sets out on a quest for revenge and becoming a wuxia master. Surprisingly, not a lot of RPGs take place in ancient Chinese fantasy, so this setting alone makes this game stand out. There's also a big emphasis on forming relationships with various NPCs and recruiting other martial artists to help you on your journey. Your choices do affect the game, and there's even multiple endings, giving this story a lot of replayability. More reason to exist in this world is fine by me. I mean, just look at how absolutely gorgeous the HD 2D style is. I think these environments look incredible. When it comes to battles, they play out like a tactical RPG, where you can either switch between turn-based and real-time. Pretty cool. I played the demo a while back, and it was really fun. I can't wait to dive into it more. Luckily though, the wait is over. Wandering Sword just came out today on September 15th for Steam. You can find the link to its page in our video description. In addition to this, the creators of Wandering Sword are giving out exclusive Steam links to the full game on their Twitter to a handful of lucky people. Yeah, I'm not calling it X. If you want to capitalize on this great opportunity, you can find the link to their Twitter page in our description as well. Thank you, Wandering Sword, for sponsoring this video. The next game we have on our list is Grandia II. Grandia II was developed by the company Game Arts and originally was released for the Dreamcast. It later got ported to the PS2, PC, and most recently, the Nintendo Switch. It's also a sequel in name only, so you don't need to worry about playing the first game first. In Grandia 2, you play as the cocky, sarcastic Geohound, Ryudo, as he gets caught up in a battle between the God of Darkness and the God of Light. Okay, that makes it sound a bit generic, so I'm not gonna lie, the story's not incredibly deep, but it does have some great moments and the characters are a lot more mature and grown up than the original. I do think the first game is just as good, if not even better, but it is much more lighthearted. That one's all about a coming-of-age journey and the sense of adventure, whereas Grandia 2 on the other hand is much darker and deals with religious themes. If you want a more mature story with older characters, Grandia 2 is where you want to go. I'm just a huge fan of the cast. Ryudo is one of my favorite protagonists ever. He doesn't stay an asshole the entire game and sees some nice growth. Hard not to love Millennia too. She's a fan favorite for good reason. I'm also quite fond of Tio, Merrick, and Melphis. Tio and Merrick have a nice dynamic with the seemingly intimidating Beastman showing the emotionless robot how to grow in touch with their feelings. It's some good stuff. And Melphis, I just think he has a cool design and an interesting backstory. I don't think the story is bad by any means, but I do find the individual characters more compelling than the overall narrative. I also need to note, the combat in Grandia 2 is truly outstanding. The game may be on this list for its story due to the topic of the video, but its battle system is its biggest strength. It's a super engaging mix of real-time and turn-based, and it's so incredibly fun. Easily some of my favorite gameplay in the entire genre. With the amazing combat, the darker and more mature story, and the great cast of characters, I consider Grandia 2 an absolute classic and a must-play. If you haven't played this one yet, it gets my strongest recommendation. Check it out.
Nothing withstands my blade.
The next game we have on our list is Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together. And yes, for those of you that have watched the first couple parts, you guys knew this one was coming. We've already talked about Final Fantasy Tactics and Ogre Battle, so it's only right we would cover Tactics Ogre next. This game's got a pretty interesting history. It initially came out for the Super Famicom and Sega Saturn, however, these versions never left Japan. The first time North America would see it though would be the PlayStation version. There would later be a remake for the PSP and then a remaster of that remake for the Nintendo Switch, PS4, PS5, and PC. It's hard to say what the definitive version is though. Fans seem to be pretty split. The recent remaster is easily the most accessible, so that's not a bad one to start with I think. It's got a remastered soundtrack, full voice acting, and some quality of life changes like levels not restarting at 1 when you change classes. It also might be the most difficult though, as it has a system in place to prevent you from getting over leveled. To me, I think this is a good thing, as it forces you to use strategy in a strategy RPG, but if you're the type that likes to grind a lot and get overpowered and steamroll everything, maybe look into the other versions. Anyway, this is of course a Yasumi Matsuno game, the same dude who directed Final Fantasy Tactics and Vagrant Story, and also wrote for Final Fantasy XII, so you kinda know the vibe you're in for here. It's a mature story about war, politics, racism, classism, and all that good stuff. Or bad stuff, actually. It's very lore heavy, so there's a lot of stuff to read up on if you choose to delve into it. Even without that though, the moment-to-moment story beats are gripping and engaging. It did a great job keeping my interest and making me think. You play as a member of a rebellion group, Denim, as he gradually finds himself getting deeper in an escalating war and the accompanying political tension. The story can branch off into a lawful, chaotic, or neutral route, and it's pretty cool. Gameplay-wise, as you can see, this is obviously a tactical role-playing game. The original was kinda like a prototype for Final Fantasy Tactics actually. If you like the gameplay in that one, you'll like it here too. Overall, Tactics Ogre is kinda like the older brother of Final Fantasy Tactics that often gets overlooked due to its younger sibling. While it was never quite as popular or captured that same level of attention in the tactical RPG zeitgeist, it is still a damn great game that deserves some more love. True tactical RPG fans, Tactical RPG. Coming up next, we have the entire Xenosaga Trilogy. I guess I'm kinda cheating here, but it's pretty hard to talk about just one of them without talking about all of them. They're all direct sequels after all. Xenosaga was released for the PS2 and was developed by the company Monolith Soft. It was actually created as a spiritual successor to Xenogears, made by the same dude who directed that game, Tetsuya Takahashi. So, Xenogears was initially intended to be episode 5 of a 6-game series, but due to a variety of reasons, the other ones never got made. Knowing that, you'd think he'd tone down his ambitious ideas a bit for his next venture, right? Well, actually, no. Xenosaga was also supposed to be a 6-game series, however Namco made him shorten it down to a trilogy. That didn't stop him from trying to achieve his grand scope though. Xenosaga is extremely narrative heavy with tons of deep themes. You got religious symbolism, philosophy, psychology, deep scientific concepts, and the list goes on. The story has you playing as a scientist, Shion Izuki, as she gets entangled in an intergalactic war between an ancient alien race called the Gnosis and a religious cult known as the Ormus. To say much more than that would start getting into spoiler territory. It's a grand sci-fi epic, through and through though. The plot is very complex with a lot of mature themes explored. Albedo is a super compelling, fleshed out antagonist is often considered one of the best JRPG villains of all time. It's a masterclass in how to write a villain, and Crispin Freeman delivers an unforgettable performance. Cosmos is also a character that you can't forget. She's one of Namco's most popular characters ever and kinda became like the mascot of Monolith Soft. She's made tons of appearances in various Namco properties over the years and even made a cameo in Xenoblade 2 as a playable blade. Probably drew some people crazy trying to get her though. Anyway, to experience the entire story, you're gonna have to play all 3 games, so yeah, quite the undertaking. They're not all made equal either. Episode 2 is often considered the black sheep. The art style is completely different for one and kind of leans into Uncanny Valley a bit. However, Episode 3 is considered the best, so you do have to play 2 to get there. Yeah, it's kinda like the classic, oh, you just gotta make it past the first 70 hours, then it gets good, trust me. Not for real though, Episode 1 is still pretty good, and even Episode 2 has its strengths. It definitely does end on a high note though. The battle systems also range a bit from game to game as well, however, they're always turn-based. Unfortunately, Xenosaga has yet to get a re-release anywhere else, so the PS2 remains your only way to play. However, with the recent success of the Xenoblade series that Takahashi also created, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a remaster one of these days. Until then, I'll be waiting. The next game we have on our list is Chrono Cross. This Squaresoft classic initially came out for the PS1, but has recently seen a remaster for the Nintendo Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. This is called the Radical Dreamers Edition, and it's largely the same. Gameplay-wise, that is. It has upscaled backgrounds, new font, new character models, new character portraits, and a remastered soundtrack. Though you can revert all these back to the originals, I believe, besides the soundtrack. However, it's just a higher quality version of the original, so not a big deal. Oh yeah, there's also a fast forward option too. That's pretty neat. These changes are okay, but I'm team original portraits all day. Anyway, let's talk about the actual game. Well, to be perfectly honest, Chrono Cross might be one of the most polarizing JRPGs of all time. Many like myself consider it to be a flawed masterpiece, whereas some others kinda hate it. A lot of that stems from it being wildly different from Chrono Trigger, so in this regard, some fans consider it a disappointing sequel. The 40+ playable characters also seem to be a very hit or miss thing. However, if you can look past all this stuff and not think of Chrono Trigger when playing it, there is an incredibly deep and profound experience to be had here. If you want to think and reflect on the choices you've made in life, this is your game. If you're susceptible to existential crises though, then maybe look the other way. With the whole alternate dimension aspect, this game is big on exploring the concept of the same characters living out different lives based on the choices that they have made. It really gets you thinking, how would my life have changed if I did something differently back then? Chrono Trigger was about time traveling, whereas Chrono Cross is about dimension hopping. Instead of seeing how the passage of time affects the world, you get to see how different choices affect the world. Yes, the overall narrative may not make the most sense at times, especially later in the game, but if these concepts sound interesting to you, you're probably gonna like it. It's a game that's really grown on me over time that I've only come to appreciate more and more as I've gotten older. And that Yasunori Mitsuda soundtrack, man, literally my favorite video game OST of all time. Every track is an absolute banger. When you combine it with the stunningly gorgeous backgrounds, you have an amazing top-tier atmosphere that's never been matched before. Honestly, the atmosphere alone makes this a must-play. I'm also quite fond of the battle system. It's very unique with a stamina-like system and element grid, and even to this day, I've never played something quite like it before. If you want to hear some more of my detailed thoughts about the game, we did release a 40-minute retrospective over it last year, so check that one out. The next game we have on our list is Laplace No Ma, or Demon of Laplace. Yeah, got a real obscure one here. Initially I was gonna include Final Fantasy IV as a 16-bit entry, but then I was like, you know what, everyone knows about that one already, I'll talk about it another time. It's kinda fun to highlight some more unknown stuff, you know? And unknown, this one definitely is. It was developed by Group S&E and came out for the Super Famicom. Yes, just the Super Famicom. While it never got an official English release, there is a fan translation online and it's damn good. Anyway, the story in this game is unlike any other Super Nintendo RPG. Basically, there's this mansion that these 3 kids disappeared in, and shortly after the owner disappeared as well, so it's kinda like this big mystery. The case went cold after a while until someone opened it back up, and you, having the choice of either being male or female, decide to investigate it. You recruit 3 other people to help you, making a party of 4, however, there are 5 classes total, meaning 1 will have to be left behind. Given the setting of the game and that it takes place in 1920s Massachusetts, the classes are obviously quite a bit different than what you normally see though. The actual gameplay kinda plays out like a dungeon crawler as you explore the mansion and visit the nearby town in between. Battles are turn-based as well. I gotta be honest though, the RPG aspects may be some of the more least interesting aspects about the game. To fit with the topic, the game is definitely here for its story. It's quite dark and mature and has some nice twists along the way. There's some Lovecraftian elements as well, which are always cool to me. The writing is also very good and really adds to the atmosphere. Same with the music and sound effects too. That's all I'll say though, the story is best experienced on your own. So, if you want a survival horror, turn-based RPG with dark and sinister themes, this one's for you. It won't appeal to everyone, but if you like what you're looking at, it's worth checking out. The next game we have on our list is Breath of Fire 4. This Capcom classic came out for the PS1 and has yet to see a re-release since. Well, in North America, that is. It did get a PC port in Japan and Europe like 20 years ago. Anyway, I know what some of you guys are thinking. Breath of Fire 4? Mature? This super colorful game with all the anthropomorphic species? Yes, don't let the cheery presentation fool you. Breath of Fire 4 has some of the darkest moments in any PS1 game, not even just RPGs. These moments I will not spoil as they come way later in the game, but just know that they're truly fucked up and unsettling. The atmosphere even turns like full-on horror at times. Even not taking these scenes into consideration though, the game has a very mature story and deserves to be here. This is largely because of Foul Lu's story. Yeah, I might be pronouncing that wrong, my bad if so. In Breath of Fire 4, not only do you play a series staple protagonist Ryu as he tries to find the origins of his dragon lineage, but you also play as Foul Lu, an ancient emperor dragon god that has been awakened to modern day. Following both Ryu and Foul Lu show the duality of man and how your environmental surroundings can have an influence on the way you view the world. It's a really interesting juxtaposition. Ryu has been shown love and kindness by those close to him, which makes him want to protect the world as he's seen the good in it, whereas Foul Lu on the other hand has been shown hatred and animosity and, well, you can probably guess the effect that has on someone. As a kid, I never realized how deep the story was, but now, as an adult, it really makes you think. I can already see some comments now. Foul Lu was not wrong. For real though, I do think he's one of the most compelling antagonists we've ever gotten in the genre, with some really hard-hitting moments. When you combine all this with the great music, the best turn-based gameplay in the series, and some of the best, smoothest looking sprites on the entire console, you have an absolute top-tier JRPG that's definitely worth playing. If you're interested in hearing some more of my detailed thoughts about the game, we did release a 40-minute retrospective over it last year as well, so check that video out. The next game we have on our list is Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. Yeah, there are other Fire Emblem games that could go here. However, Path of Radiance is often considered to have one of the best stories in the series, and out of the ones I've played, I'm inclined to agree. Path of Radiance was released for the GameCube, and like every other game in the Fire Emblem series, it was developed by the company Intelligent Systems, the same company that also makes the Paper Mario series. First things first, Path of Radiance was a huge leap forward for the series. It was the first time the series went 3D, had full motion cutscenes, and had voice acting. When it comes to the story, you play as Ike, the son of a mercenary leader, as him and his band of mercenaries unite various nations together across the continent of Tellius to thwart the plans of a common enemy bent on releasing a dark god. Along the way, there's a lot of racial tension to overcome, which plays a pretty big role in this game. Overall, it's just a well-executed story. The characters have some depth, they're written well, and the lore's pretty interesting. No, yeah, I should also clarify, you don't need to play any other Fire Emblem game before this to understand the story. Path of Radiance did get a direct sequel for the Wii though, Radiant Dawn. It's a pretty good game too, but I do prefer Path of Radiance. It's a real shame it's yet to get a re-release anywhere, as the price tag on this bad boy is, certainly something. Nintendo, what are you doing? Put this on the Switch. The Fire Emblem series has only gotten way more popular since this came out. It'd be a great way to introduce this one to new fans. A lot of people only know Ike these days because of Smash Bros, and we need to change that. Just be prepared though. If you are a new fan looking to check this one out, just know permadeath is a thing. Yeah, you gotta play it a bit more strategically than newer entries. Besides that, it's the same old tactical RPG gameplay you know and love. Combined with a great mature story, and you have an absolute must-play for tactical RPG fans. Alright, the last game we have on this list, or games I should say, is Persona 2 Innocent Sin and Persona 2 Eternal Punishment. Yeah, kinda cheating again here, but these are like one big game, so it'd feel weird not to include both. Anyway, this list wouldn't be complete without an Atlas entry. The Shin Megami Tensei franchise as a whole is known for having dark and mature stories, and Persona 2 is no exception. I know this kinda contradicts what I said in the very first video about not looking for RPGs where you play as high schoolers, but if you played Persona 2, you know this doesn't matter at all. These games are deep and depressingly dark. In my opinion, they're probably the most depressing entries in the Persona series. Innocent Sin has you playing as a high schooler, Tatsuya, as he investigates the mystery of the elusive Joker figure causing chaos and warping reality around the city. That's just scratching the surface though, as it gets much more complex than that. Eternal Punishment takes place directly after Innocent Sin and deals with the aftermath of that game's events. In this game though, you assume the role of Maya, a teen reporter who was just a party member in Innocent Sin. To go into much more detail about this one would spoil the story of the first game though, so yeah, I'm not gonna do that. Unlike most of the other Persona games, it's kinda hard to apply a single theme to this duology, I think. There's a lot of themes at play here. The most obvious ones though you can get by looking at the titles, Sin and Punishment. Basically, there are consequences for your actions, you know, cause and effect. However, not all of your actions may have the desired effect. Sometimes you gotta learn to live with the mistakes you've made, and the regret that comes with it. There's also themes of our words holding weight, rumors affecting reality so it's our responsibility to shape the world how we want, attaining your goals and dreams, coming to terms with being an adult, and all that good stuff. They are very deep and complex games that make you think. They get a little crazy at times too, like everyone's least favorite German dude even makes an appearance. Certainly not only one of the more unique stories in the Persona series, but in the entire genre. Gameplay, on the other hand, is a little dated, not gonna lie. It's definitely an improvement upon the first Persona, but you do have to have some tolerance for a little bit of old school RPG-ness. By far the worst things about the games, though, is just how Atlus has handled them. Despite Persona 1 and Eternal Punishment coming out for the PlayStation in the West, Innocent Sin never did. This means we got the second half to a two-part story, but not the first. Like, imagine if Square gave us Final Fantasy X-2, but not Final Fantasy X. That would make no sense, right? I think I read somewhere that they thought Innocent Sin was too dark to bring over, but it's like, Persona 1 and Eternal Punishment were pretty dark too. With that said, Innocent Sin did get a port to the PSP later on with some quality of life changes, and fortunately, this one did come out in the West. However, the PSP port of Eternal Punishment did not. Why? It's so annoying that we haven't gotten two consistent versions of both games in the West. Even to this day, with how incredibly popular Persona is now, Atlus has yet to rectify this issue. It's like they pretend any Persona game before 3 doesn't exist. P3, P4, P5 fans out here feasting, but Persona 2 fans, even Persona 1 for that matter, we stay taking massive L's. Big enough L on our forehead, you can call us Luigi. With that said, on a more positive note though, I do think it's only a matter of time before we get to Feast as well. There's no way Atlus won't re-release these at some point. It's anyone's guess as to when that'll actually be, but just wait. It's coming. Alright, and that about wraps up this video. Thanks for watching everyone, we hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please either consider hitting that like button, or subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. What are some JRPGs you guys consider to have deep and mature stories? Again, there's a good chance it was already featured in part 1 or part 2, however, even with that said, there's still plenty of other RPGs out there that we've yet to talk about that could fit here, so let us know in the comments. As always, just want to give a huge thank you to our Patreon supporters, and an extra special shout out to our top patrons, Derek Drost, Jesse Spencer, Jump Rock, and Saino. All of your support and generosity is very much appreciated. Other than that, thanks again for watching everyone, and hope you have an awesome day. This is Corbin from Gaming Productions. Until next time.